Hi, I'm Bryce Crittenden.
Hi, I'm Caroline Land, and welcome back to EPL's Overdue Finds.
Hey, Caroline, how are you today?
I'm doing well, Bryce. How are you?
Really good. We joked about this on our last episode, our Barbie episode, and it's like almost like today we're continuing this series of toy lines being turned into movies.
Yeah.
And we're talking about them, but like we didn't like set this out on purpose at the beginning. It just timeline wise, just everything lined up perfectly. So like,
Yeah, this is just how life
yeah,
happened.
and I'm okay with that. And like, just to let listeners know, this is not slowly morphing into a toy line turns into a movie podcast, although I wouldn't be opposed to that at all.
Yeah.
But
And the
yeah,
more toys that become movies just gives us more things to talk about.
absolutely. And with the success of Barbie, let's face it, like we are going to be getting that in the future. So look out for that Uno episode of Overdue Finds will be coming up. Rumor has it there's going to be a
Yeah.
Polly Pocket movie. So hey, it's all going to be coming to future episodes of this show.
Yeah, stay tuned.
So today, of course, we are talking about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the Heroes in a Half Shell. Caroline, this is one that I've been looking forward to for a while when I saw that there's a new movie coming out. And once again, similar to Barbie, like the sheer amount of stuff that we have in our collection tied to the Ninja Turtles, it just makes total sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's what we're going to be chatting all about today. We're going to be looking back at the history of the Ninja Turtles, some of our favorite memories, and of course, some of the titles that you can borrow from us here at EPL. And joining us today, I don't know if she's exactly like the number one Ninja Turtles fan in the EPL system, but every now and then when we reach out to staff about just to get their feedback on certain things, we'd be like, hey, what do you think about these characters for March Madness, or give us some episode ideas. So one individual always comes through with a Ninja Turtles selection. So it just made sense to bring her back on the show. Welcome back, Bethany Arsenault. Bethany, how are you today?
I am so excited for this episode and to talk all things Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yes, this is gonna be fun. I've got lots of questions for you. I was joking around before Caroline came on that I've got Ninja Turtles questions for you, but I'm like, we will save it for the podcast. And I'm tempted to ask you one now, but I'm like, I will save it for that segment in the show. So this is going to be fun. Caroline, I'm really looking forward to hearing about your history with the Ninja Turtles. I don't think it's really come up. I've brought it up a few times on the show, but I don't think you've brought up the Ninja Turtles quite as much as I have.
Not a lot. Yeah, I mean, definitely not as much as you. I feel confident saying that.
Yeah. So it's going to be a fun one today, and we thank everybody for downloading and joining us. But before we get into our Overdue Finds picks, Caroline, if you listen to Overdue Finds on a regular basis, you know that we strongly believe that kids should not be the only ones allowed to participate in summer reading clubs, right?
Yes, so firmly held. It's one of the core Overdue Finds beliefs.
That's right. If we were writing a mission statement of the show, that would be probably number one on that mission statement anyway. But good news, though, because there's now a summer reading club for adults. From now until August 27th, both adults and teens can sign up for Summer Reads 23. Keep track of your reading this summer and complete some fun activities to have your name entered to win our grand prize of a Lego Ideas typewriter. Caroline, I still have not put it together. Like when I go into the office, it's sitting on my desk. I'm just so tempted to. Mostly, I need to make sure that all the pieces are there. So I'm doing it for the community, but
absolutely.
Yes. So and also you can win some amazing other prizes as well, including gift cards to Edmonton businesses, including Snow Valley. So sign up at epl.ca/summer-reads or go into any of your local EPL branches and pick up your activity sheet. Super easy to do and fun. And yeah, it's funny. This episode comes out on August 11th. So when you're hearing this, there's only a couple weeks left to go. All you need to do is read for 7 hours and do 2 activities. So yeah, there's you still have lots of time to participate.
Yeah, we believe in you. You can do it.
All right, so let's get into our overdue finds picks. Bethany, it's been a while since you've been on the show. I was looking back at my notes, and the last episode I believe you were on was our best and worst TV endings episode, which is like over a year ago. So time flies by here on the show. Do you have a TV pick for us this week, or do you have something else you'd like to recommend?
I'm going to recommend something else. Although, I mean, always recommend Seinfeld for TV picks.
Oh yeah.
My recommendation this time is A Beautifully Foolish Endeavor by Hank Green. Right now, I'm listening to it as an audiobook on Libby. And it's a follow-up to Hank Green's An Absolutely Remarkable Thing. So you can get both of those from EPL. You can get them through Overdrive and listen to them on the Libby app or read them in the Libby app. And they're great science fiction books. They have like a bit of a Transformers vibe to it. It's really cool.
Nice. I like it.
Yeah.
Transformers, Caroline, there's another episode we could do. we missed that movie when it came out earlier this summer.
There was Transformers, and then last week, Masters of the Universe.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be its own little like mini series.
That's right. But Libby, though, that you mentioned where you're listening to the audiobook on, if you're listening to this episode, like go check out Libby if you haven't. It's an amazing app. You can get it on your phone, and there's lots of stuff where I'll be at home and I'll be like, oh, I heard about a book, and I'll go on there to search if we have it as an audiobook or ebook. So it's an awesome resource to go check out.
I'm mostly familiar with Hank Green as like the online personality. Is that how you came to him, or did you kind of come through the sci-fi writing aspect of his work?
I actually wrote my master's thesis on his brother John Green, and so I was introduced to Hank through John and their like online personalities. And then when he decided to like get into writing and write science fiction, I mean, it's such a great fit for Hank. He's very nerdy, and he's a fantastic writer. So, yeah.
Nice.
Neat.
Caroline, how about you? What have you been enjoying lately?
I am going to talk about the book Patricia Wants to Cuddle. I believe it's by Samantha Allen. I did not write down the author, which is like the first time in 100 and however many episodes I've done. But I'm going to confirm that. Yes, Samantha Allen. So again, the book is Patricia Wants to Cuddle by Samantha Allen. It's X-Files meets The Bachelor meets Beauty Queens by Libba Bray. So there is a very specific reader that this is going to apply to, and this is for that reader. So the kind of synopsis is that they're down to the final 4 on The Catch, a reality dating show with a big online following. It's time for a romantic trip to the Pacific Northwest. The remote location isn't what the Bachelorettes were expecting. But when it starts seeming like someone might be after them, the rustic accommodations could be the least of their worries. So, as I said, I like doing the X meets Y. X-Files meets The Bachelor is an obvious one, meets Beauty Queens by Libba Bray. That was a book that came out several years ago now, but it was about this group of teen beauty pageant contestants who were in a plane crash on an island. Highly recommend checking that out. That's kind of a detour in this recommendation. I chose this book for the cover. We've talked about this in the past. I know they say you shouldn't, and there are definitely great books that have poor covers, but a good cover can definitely help gather someone's attention on this. And this, I don't even want to talk about the cover, which is, I guess, good because we're not a visual medium right
Yeah.
now. But I feel like it's an interesting choice in how much it kind of gives away to it, but it gets you reading, and I guess that it doesn't spoil too much of the book. It's more character driven, so if you're a heavy kind of plot reader, it might not kind of have enough in there for you, but heavy on character study, definitely a little paranormal, supernatural, unsure kind of what's going on. Patricia Wants to Cuddle is my recommendation.
Great title too. That's the other thing as well. Like, I mean, a title
Yeah.
like that kind of just grabs your attention right away.
Yeah, and I will tell you to entice you, Patricia is not one of the 4 finalists.
What?
So who is she?
Yeah. There's cuddling and mystery and intrigue
And TV reality shows, like
Yeah.
there's a lot in there around like how the shows, even if they're not quote unquote scripted, they are kind of like storyboarded, and the producer characters in the book are, really trying to push to make sure they get each character to say what they need to say on camera, and just the different elements of that was really interesting as well. Thinking, what would I do in this situation?
Nice.
Yeah. So Bryce, what's your overdue find?
Well, I had one pick lined up, but I'm gonna save it for our next episode because so we're recording this on July 31st in the afternoon, and just a few hours ago, I was just kind of tidying up my notes for today's recording, and saw online that unfortunately we lost actor Paul Rubens earlier today. Of course, he played one of the most iconic characters from the 80s, Pee Wee Herman. He even got to host SNL as Pee Wee Herman in the 80s. So, you know what? I was looking in our collection today, and we do have several Pee Wee Herman titles. We've talked a little bit before about Pee Wee's Big Adventure on the show, and Caroline, I think that may have been a previous overdue find pick of yours. But today, actually, I'm going to recommend Pee Wee's Playhouse. So that was the Saturday morning series, and you can actually stream all 5 seasons of that show through us on Hoopla. So, if you're not familiar with it, Pee Wee's Playhouse ran from 1986 through 1990, and for me personally, as a kid of the 80s, this was one of my favorite shows to watch on Saturday mornings. I remember my brother Jeremy and I, we were similar in age, and yeah, we would watch it, do our terrible Pee Wee Herman imitations, drive my mom nuts by trying to copy everything that happened on Pee Wee's Playhouse. So this is a very kind of like, this is a big show for me as a kid. You know, it was loud, but it was also fun. And at times it kind of felt like I was watching something that maybe as a kid, like maybe you shouldn't have technically been allowed to watch, like you were kind of in on some secret. But as an adult, a little while ago, I remember sitting down just kind of watching a random episode, and it's a really fun show to kind of go back and watch, because like a lot of the humor now can really be, adults will enjoy this. Like obviously kids do, because that's who it's made for, but adults in general, I think, will really kind of appreciate, I think, the humor more. So yeah, like, I mean, if you're not that familiar with the show, it just features Pee Wee having fun with his friends and objects that come to life, like Cherry, in his playhouse. And we got some great cameos, including the late Phil Hartman, who plays Captain Carl on, I think it's like 6 episodes. Lawrence Fishburne plays Cowboy Curtis. And it's funny because it's like, for Cowboy Curtis, like Lawrence Fishburne's already done like Apocalypse Now and a bunch of these serious movies, but here he is, coming on this Saturday morning kids show in the late 80s to be Cowboy Curtis. So it's really, really fun to go back and watch. Plus, we also get some great kind of Pee-wee introduces some great cartoon shorts in there. I always like the claymation Penny ones, and there was like this dinosaur family. So obviously really sad to hear about the passing of Paul Rubens. And if you get a chance, go check out some Pee-wee's Playhouse.
My vote goes to checking out the Pee-wee's Playhouse Christmas special,
Yes.
which is just, it can stand alone. Don't feel you need to watch the entire series before it. I mean, obviously you can, but the Christmas special is just wild. It has Cowboy Curtis, it has Penny, it has Grace Jones, it has Oprah, it has so many stars. Annette Funicello stops by, and Pee-wee puts her to work making Christmas cards. Like, just the cast is amazing. The lesson is heartwarming. Just overall, it's not Christmas until you see Pee-wee's Christmas special, for sure.
Great recommendation. And the part with Annette Funicello and the Christmas cards, if I recall, doesn't he have her write like it's like hundreds of cards or something, and he keeps going back to check on her, and Pee-wee's kind of like, hurry up, and she's just like, I'm trying, Pee-wee. And she just keeps doodling away at her Christmas cards.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. So go. You can't go wrong with any Pee-wee Herman titles. So go check those out. So kind of on the same lines today, another 80s property that we're going to be chatting all about today is, of course, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I'm so excited about this. Caroline, I know normally that you do the kind of fun facts, little trivia, but I thought, you know what? You've been doing such an awesome job. Give you a little bit of a break. I'd fill in on today's episode. Is that okay with you?
Totally fine. Looking forward to hearing them.
All right. So, Bethany, feel free to correct me if I get any facts wrong here. So, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was actually originally introduced as a comic book series created by artists Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird in 1984. And of course, it follows Leonardo, Michelangelo, Donatello, and Raphael as turtle brothers trained in ninjutsu by their sensei Splinter, who happens to be a rat. And they fight evildoers in New York City, including Shredder, his foot soldiers, and Krang. The series actually, the comic book series originally began as a spoof on the superhero genre, but it turned into a huge hit for Mirage Studios, which released the comic. And so Eastman and Laird, they considered giving the turtles Japanese names, but instead named them after Italian Renaissance artists Leonardo, Raphael, Donatello, Michelangelo, which Laird said just felt quirky enough to fit the concept. And really everything for the Ninja Turtles kind of like just blew up in 1987 when they sold the license to the characters to Playmates Toys, which developed the line of action figures, which saw over $1.1 billion in sales between 88 and 92. Those were prime kid years for me. I know a good chunk of that came out of my allowance anyway. But yeah, basically this made them one of the top selling toy franchises of all time. And with the action figures, of course, they were promoted with an animated series, which began in 87 and ran for almost a decade. And this is one of my favorite stats about it. I counted this earlier. There have been 44 video games, which also include pinball machines, released since 89 in 4 different comic book series. Of course, we've had several films have been released. The first being in 1990. So the first Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles film at one point was actually the highest grossing independent film of all time. And that actually kind of takes us up to the latest Ninja Turtles movie called Mutant Mayhem, which opens on August 2nd. So that kind of leads us up to you today a quick overview of the Ninja Turtles. If you're listening to this episode, I assume you know who the Ninja Turtles are at this point. But Bethany, I know you're a big Ninja Turtles fan. So how did you become interested in Ninja Turtles? Like at what age? Like did you really kind of get into them?
Yeah, so huge Ninja Turtles fan. I have a Ninja Turtles tattoo. I still like watch the movies, the 1990 movies, a couple times a year. Big fan of the animated series. My introduction to the Turtles was definitely the 1990 movie, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the original movie. And that and the animated series and the Turtles musical coming out of their shells, which like had a huge impact on me. Like the album that they released with it, the tour that they did, all the TV appearances that they did. They went on Oprah with that tour, and I taped that on Oprah, and I watched it over and over and over again, and like eventually my brother taped over it, and it was like just the worst day of my life when that happened.
Dark day in your family's history.
It was such a dark day. But definitely those kind of three pieces of media, the original movie, the animated series, and then the coming out of our shells tour was kind of my foray into the Turtles.
So I actually like to consider myself a fairly big Ninja Turtles fan. The Coming Out of Our Shells tour now, I've never watched it, but I think if I recall, is that the one where they're all wearing like the cutoff like jean jackets?
Yeah, the jean vests with like the little studs on it, and they put down their weapons and they pick up their instruments and they play, and they're going to save the world by playing music. And it was sponsored by Pizza Hut, so of course pizza plays like a very big is factored very heavily in that tour. And it's still like every now and then I'll pop on that album and listen to it, and it's a great album. I definitely recommend it.
Speaking of music, the first Ninja Turtle movie, is that the one that has Ninja Rap?
No, that's
number 2.
No, it's okay. We are 23 minutes into recording, and I have exposed myself. I know actually very little about Ninja Turtles, but I'm eager to learn. Tell me about Ninja Rap.
Ninja Rap performed by Vanilla Ice and the Ninja Turtles. It's in Secret of the Ooze. And it's just like kind of like the defining moment of Secret of the Ooze. It's such a fabulous scene in that movie. It's a really like a wonderful moment of, again, like the Turtles like fighting with music instead of like their weapons. And that's how they take down Toka and Razar in that movie, spoiler alert. But it's another great song to listen to if you're ever in that nostalgic mood.
If you needed to show somebody like 5 minutes to show them what the early 90s were about, I would show them that scene, because it is the most early 90s thing of all time. You got Vanilla Ice, you got his music, you got the Ninja Turtles. It just like captures everything great / cheesy about the early 90s.
And like they're all in that club, and the outfits in the club and the hats that some of the people are wearing.
Lots of
and
puffy
then there's
pants.
the puffy pants, and there's like a great dance that goes along with the turtle rap, the ninja rap. So yeah, definitely a great scene.
Bethany, I have to ask you mentioned the tattoo. is it of a certain character or just the Ninja Turtle symbol? Can you share that with us?
Yeah, it's just all 4 of their heads.
Oh, cool.
So I'll show you guys because you'll be able to see it, even though this is an audio medium.
Yeah.
But it's just all 4 of their heads going down my arm, and then their colored bandanas.
I like it.
Yeah.
So Caroline, you mentioned that, and I don't think it's like you shouldn't be shamed for not knowing that Go Ninja Go is, you didn't know which Ninja Turtles movie that was in. Like, honestly.
But I shouldn't be proud either.
Well, I didn't say that. That's, if you think that, that's up to you. But I would never say that. So what about you? Like, did you like the Ninja Turtles as a kid? Were you aware of them? Like, how did you, were you really interested in them?
Yeah, definitely aware of them. I don't know how. Is it possible to grow up in the 80s and not be aware of Ninja Turtles? If that's you, reach out to the podcast. We want to talk to you. Overdue finds at epl.ca. Or no, podcast at epl. Yeah. Please, podcast at epl.ca. Yeah, so definitely aware of them, like born into this kind of culture that where they were existing to various degrees of popularity by the time I was kind of old enough to be aware of what I was watching or doing or listening to. They were on the cartoon was on, which was definitely probably, like, in terms of mass mainstream media broadcast into my life. Watched it, but not really to know anything about it. Like, it was just on. It was just there. And so definitely, I mean, I knew who April was. I liked April. I liked that, she had her like yellow jumpsuit look happening. I definitely remember watching the show. Looking back, I watched some clips on YouTube, and I always love it when YouTube is able to confirm a vague memory that I have, because that's how I learned that turtle tips were a thing that existed. They were short like PSAs that ran on like the 4th and 5th season of the cartoon show that like encouraged you to do things like put litter in the garbage can, or the one that I remembered, when you're brushing your teeth, don't leave the tap running. And so to this day, I don't. And it's because of the Ninja Turtles. I saw that when I was very young. So definitely watch that. Remember the animated pizza from the show, and like it just made me want to eat pizza. So
they just have that great cheese pull where they'd grab a slice and it was like 3 pounds of cheese coming with it per slice.
Exactly. Like that's like I search for that in real life.
Yeah.
So.
Right? Like I've been chasing that kind of cheese like pull my entire life, and I've never been able to find it. It's just such a movie magic kind of thing.
Yeah.
In the 90s, there was something about the cheese pull from the pizza because it was like Ninja Turtles, and from a Goofy movie is also the other scene too that a lot of people reference, where Max is pulling his piece of pizza, and it's subliminal messages. They were just like, eat pizza, eat pizza.
Yeah. And and then I remember too, I had a copy of the Mad magazine that had the Ninja Turtles 2 on it. They parodied it as "The secret is to snooze." And I don't know why I had this magazine, but I did. And so it's always kind of like been in my head. Like, that's the thing around. I don't think I had any of the toys, but there might have been a random one thrown in my Barbie box that I talked about last week. I remember jumping up and down on the neighbors little trampoline, like not even like a yard size one, like this was like an aerobics size kids trampoline, and we would just be jumping up and down and like singing the theme song like just over and over, like pretty much just the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles line over and over because it's so catchy. That is my one Ninja Turtles trivia piece, which is that the theme song to the animated series, the one you are probably singing in your head right now if you're thinking of it, was written by Chuck Lorre.
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah.
And he does like some of the voice tags in it too. Like you can hear a little bit of
Like-
speaking parts in it, and that's
Like,
Chuck Lorre.
give me a
doing it.
break.
Yeah, that's him. Yeah.
Yeah, and so he went on to do sitcoms like Big Bang Theory and Two and a Half Men, and yeah, also wrote that. So we've almost exhausted my Ninja Turtles knowledge at this point, Bryce.
You know what? For me, looking at the timeline, the cartoon came out in '87. I'm like 8 years old. This hit me as a kid at like the absolute perfect time.
Like they designed it in a lab for you.
They had a picture of me. They were like, all right, this kid likes wrestling. He's coming off of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. He needs something else. And hence the Ninja Turtles were born. But yeah, it was like, I remember being in elementary school and just all the kids were all about the Ninja Turtles. I remember the movie, so it came on 90. I didn't see it like original. Well, I ended up actually seeing it in the drive-in with my family a couple months after it was released. But I remember hearing about it from friends at school, and they had gone opening weekend, and it was like sold out and everything all the time. So it was just, that was like the movie event as a kid. But yeah, for me, love the cartoon. I had a bunch of the toys. So I mean, I also had two younger brothers. So like there was something like we all really seemed to be into at one point. Yeah, I remember seeing like, yeah, all three of the movies in the theater during the initial run. But yeah, it was just, and also too, it's kind of weird because like in the 80s, for some reason, like ninjas were like really cool. Not that they're not cool now. Ninjas will always be cool, but like ninjas were a big thing in the 80s for some strange reason. So yeah, this hit at just such a really cool time. But yeah, I remember getting a bunch of the toys for Christmas. I even remember getting the their like not their hot air balloon, but the
like a blimp.
The blimp, yeah, the Ninja Turtles blimp. I had that as a kid. I remember I got that for Christmas. So
Wow.
I don't know what happened to it. Unfortunately, I wish I still had it because I would totally have that thing on display here. But yeah, it was just perfect time for me as a kid anyway.
Wow. Yeah, I think the timing of it definitely sounds like it was made for you at that era. But I mean, there was the show, the movies, the video games that you mentioned. Why do you think it's been so successful in so many different media, Bethany?
I think it's because like the concept of the turtles is so malleable, and you can just shape it in so many different ways. Like it started with comic books, and the comics are really dark. And they, Eastman and Laird licensed the rights to make the toys, and they needed to find a way to sell the toys. So they came up with the animated series, and it was really easy to make a more like kid-friendly version in the animated series. And so from the animated series, they were able to kind of establish this more kid-friendly version. And the animated series was really defining for the Turtles too, because it's, that's where they came up with the different colored headbands. Because in the comics, the headbands are all one color. In the series, they came up with the different colored headbands. There's a couple, like they came up with the fun catchphrases like cowabunga. They came up with eating pizza, which is, another like really kid friendly thing. And then you see it switch to the 1990 movie, which comes back to that like darker tone, and pulls in like maybe an older audience again. It's more closely aligned with the comics. And then you just kind of see it like go back and forth between darker tones, lighter tones, and it just, the turtles can really fit what you're looking for in that moment. And so I think you're able to take the concept of the turtles and make it what you want with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also, just to kind of add to that as well, like some of the other kind of really popular like properties, I think of The Simpsons or Batman or Spider-Man. Like one of the things that kind of makes them so great, I think, is their supporting characters. And Ninja Turtles had, like, obviously the Ninja Turtles themselves are, those are the stars, but we've got so many other like great villains and even kind of heroes that work with them, like Casey Jones. So I'm probably going to bring up a bunch on this episode. Was one of my favorite characters, like Shredder, Krang, April O'Neil, like you said, Caroline, and her like iconic yellow jumpsuit. But yeah, we've seen like, it's interesting. We've seen these waves of popularity with it too. Like when I was a kid, like when they first came out, very, very cartoony, but then like kind of by mid to late 90s, it's kind of like the Ninja Turtles aren't really cool anymore. And they are kind of starting to shift a little bit darker with some of the games and and a few other things like that. But yeah, it just and also too now, like, I mean, you have parents who, they grew up with it and they're introducing their kids to it now, and they like it, and it just, yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised that they've been able to kind of stay so successful.
I think that there are like because it maybe started in parody, it was already tapping into like popular topics, around kind of like what's cool or what's interesting. And I mean, there's 4 descriptors right in the title that are each like, ooh, I'll read about that, like teenagers, ninjas, they're turtles. Like it kind of already kind of sets it up for that interest. I think knowing that I don't know to what extent the personalities were there in the original comic. You mentioned the colors came in the cartoon, but in the original, like when they were introduced, did they have distinct personalities the way that they do now?
They did, yeah. And it's that was like one of the ways to tell them apart in the comics, since you didn't have the colored headbands, you had their weapons and then their personalities, and like how they address each other, and that's how you tell them apart.
Yeah, and I think that that having them as different characters, I mean, obviously that's a good story, right? Who wants to read about the same like clones of each other? Although clones would probably do well as well, but with that around characters and kind of seeing how they interplay with each other, but then a little bit the opportunity for that audience uh seeing yourself in some of the characters. I've heard of a theory that's like any group of 4, like a foursome on a TV show, can be mapped to the Ninja Turtles, and because they are that kind of those not stock characters, but the kind of characters that it helps to have to create stories around there. So, I mean, we mentioned Seinfeld before, but I mean, we could, map those characters and see who the Raphael of the group would be on that. But yeah, I think the having the different personalities that then are fairly easily translatable is a way of keeping the continuity between series, even if like storyline continuity isn't there.
Yeah. So, and that's just it. Like everybody has like their favorite characters. So, Bethany, do you have a specific favorite character? Is it one of the turtles? And I think you mentioned before that your favorite era was the early 90s one.
Yeah, so like I think it's really interesting that you brought up this kind of like you can map the four turtles to like any four characters, and people see themselves in the four turtles. Like I would say overall, my favorite character is Raphael. Um, he's like the brooding, like he's like the original emo kid kind of. But like as I grew up from like the 90s until now, I definitely changed who my favorite was depending on where I was at in my life. Like the younger I was, the more I was drawn to like Mikey because he was goofy and funny and he like told funny jokes. And then um, as I hit my like teenage years, and I became like a brooding teenager. Yeah, I was like, more identifying with Raphael, and then eventually, like, when I hit my like tech phase and really interested in like technology and stuff, I, identified with Donatello. And so I think you can like find, for me anyways, I found it really easy to identify with all of the turtles at some point in my life. Um, and just kind of like grow with them as I grew up.
Caroline, did you have any favorite characters at all?
I always liked April. Also, I wouldn't say that they're my favorites, but just characters who stuck out to me was from the cartoon, the Neutrinos, and like to me it was like, oh yeah, they're a big deal. They're not really, but they're just characters that I remember from there. And then Krang, I always liked like that bodysuit robot kind of like I mean, as a kid, it was just kind of like messing around to like have the brain not be where the brain's supposed to be, and yeah, I mean, but I never followed it enough to really know what the dynamic was between like Krang and Shredder. They always seemed to be together, but I wasn't quite sure like who was running things or what was happening. So yeah, that's where my kind of interest lie.
Krang was also name dropped on 30 Rock too. I remember an episode where I don't remember the exact context of it, but I remember it being name dropped, and I was like, "Nice Ninja Turtles reference there."
Yeah.
Krang is such an interesting character because he transcends both the animated series, but he's also in the comics. Because the comics, like something that's you don't see a lot in the movies anyway, is the like the cosmic, the alien aspect, and like aliens are a big part of the Ninja Turtles comics, and Krang is actually one of the like aliens or part of the alien race in the comics, and you get to actually see that in the animated series with Krang, which you don't see in a lot of the other I guess iterations of the franchise.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you don't see Krang in any of the live action movies at all.
Yeah.
So I don't think the
Exactly.
technology was there to probably do it very good anyway.
I also, in prepping for this episode, I looked into like how they became Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and like the story that I found, and this might be unique to just like one of the threads, was that they were turtles who became more like humanoid because that was who they had been around and exposed to, but that Splinter was originally a human who now is a large rat. Is that accurate ish?
Go ahead, Bethany.
There is a later like comic series that does have that kind of storyline where it's like I think it's like the 20 I don't know, Bryce, you can, if you know anything about this, it's like the 2011-ish comic series that has like a storyline around that concept. Yeah.
So like I'm not trying to put anyone on the spot here around like your knowledge of each of the canon, but it sounds like then that the origin is not always fully explored. They just kind of we just jump in after they're already Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Well, it's funny because like on the cartoon, I don't like I think in the early seasons they actually show in the opening credits like a little bit more of like how just in that like in that cartoon like how they became Ninja Turtles. And there's always like the shot of like four adorable little turtles
Yeah.
and they get covered in ooze and then they just morph into regular people. And of course there's Splinter the Sensei who's like a real person and he's in a feud with Shredder, and then he gets the ooze on him, and he morphs into a rat. I can't tell you all the science exactly how it works, but yeah, they do have like a little shot of that in the opening credits to the animated series.
So I feel like that would be interesting story area, but it's also kind of like if you just jump into it and it's like these are turtles, they're mutants, just go with it, and like we do.
Yeah, exactly.
You're kind of like starting in the middle of the adventure. Like it's yeah.
We don't need any of that backstory. That takes way too much time to get going anyway. But I was going to say,
so Bryce, which Ninja Turtle were you dressing up as?
I unfortunately did not go as any Ninja Turtle for Halloween, but if I was dressed up as anything for Halloween, it probably would have been Casey Jones, because he was kind of like the reluctant vigilante friend of the Ninja Turtles. So yeah, he's got such a cool design because it's like just a regular guy. He's like wearing like the sleeves are cut off on his sweatshirt. He's got a hockey like goalie mask on. He carries a golf bag, but in that golf bag is some clubs, but also a baseball bat and a goalie stick as well. So he's, for me, as you know, obviously a kid who loves sports, like Casey Jones to me was like the coolest character. If you want to watch something really funny, there's a hilarious clip on YouTube. There's an episode of the Ninja Turtles where Casey Jones is working with the Turtles and he has to go undercover at this corporation. I don't know why. I think they're brainwashing people. So Casey Jones is like, we need to get somebody in this corporation to find out what's going on. So of course Casey Jones goes because he's the human. But when he shows up for his interview, he's got a suit on. But in addition to the suit, he still has his hockey mask on and he's carrying his golf bag full of weapons. And he goes in for the interview. He breaks some desks with a bat, but they like his moxie, so he's hired. So yeah, you can look up these clips on YouTube. It's really funny stuff. But yeah, I think he's almost kind of like a more kind of like crazy version of Batman. Like he's his own person, but you know, Batman at least is a little subdued and kind of cares about who he hurts, versus Casey Jones, he doesn't care. Like there's also another clip too where the Turtles are banging on a vending machine and Casey Jones shows up and he's mad at the Turtles for kind of like, breaking stuff in the playground, but then he goes and just picks up like a slide and like hurls it at the Ninja Turtles, causing more damage. So he's a little bit of a wild card, but definitely my favorite character in this series. But I was going to say too, as far as era goes, definitely the late 80s, early 90s for me as well. To me, still to this day, one of my all-time favorite video games is the first Ninja Turtles arcade game. That was a game changer. I remember seeing that in the arcade when it first came out. And you could play as your favorite turtle. And I personally liked Donatello because he used the bow and he has a little bit more reach to get those foot soldiers. So I've talked about it on the show before, but we have a video game in our collection. I think it's pretty much for all the systems. It's called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Cowabunga Collection, and it's got about 7 or 8 different games from, it's called like the old arcade games, like the one I just mentioned, the first Nintendo game which came out, which I hate today and hated as a kid, but it's still kind of fun to play. So it's got all these old Ninja Turtles games on them, and it's one I bought for my own personal collection, and it's a great game.
You didn't like the NES game?
No, I remember as a kid. I think this is why maybe I didn't like it, because it also came out around the same time as like the arcade game did, and I loved the arcade game, and the store that we rented the games from, because like this was like at the height of Ninja Turtle popularity. I think they were charging, like at the time it was a large amount of money, like $6 to rent the game or something like that. So I spent like a good chunk of my allowance to rent this thing, and I just found it to be so hard to play, and I didn't enjoy it as a kid at all. The first one anyway. Are you a fan of that original one?
Yeah, it's kind of it's definitely like the one that sticks out in my head the most. Like, I'm not a big video game person, but when I think of definitely the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles video games, that's the one that I think of. That the the music in it was really iconic. That like 2-bit or the eight I guess it's called 8-bit video game style. Yeah, it's definitely the one that stands out to me the most.
I still curse at those swimming levels so hard. The eels.
Yeah, it was definitely hard.
Oh yeah. To this day, I've never been able to pass the game.
Maybe that's like, maybe just because I wasn't like invested in passing it, that I was like, oh, I'm just playing to play Ninja Turtles, and Bryce is like, really driving away at it.
But. Yeah, cursing. I could only get past like first couple stages, and that's it.
Have either of you ever played Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Turtles in Time?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Because I just like that title. What's that one like?
Great game. Also, too, was released as an arcade game at first, and it was actually, I remember the Christmas we got our Super Nintendo. That was like the very first game we got for it, and it's really cool because, you go, like the title says, you go back in time. There's a level where there's dinosaurs. You go back to like the Old West. It's just a fun, I loved, and I still do, those kind of co-op games where like my brother and I, we didn't have to like take turns when we played it. We were both on the screen at the same time playing it. So yeah, absolutely love it. I have a copy over there on the Super Nintendo.
Neat. So you mentioned, Bryce, that there's this new movie coming out. I believe it's in theaters by the time this episode is released. Where do you see the Turtles franchise going from here, Bethany?
I really, I struggled with this question because it's so hard to like predict where the Turtles are going, again, because there's just so much that you can do with the franchise. I think like Mutant Mayhem looks super cool. I've been watching all the trailers for it on YouTube, and it looks really great. Super great cast. The concept of them like going back and actually being teenagers again sounds really cool. It has this really unique kind of animation style, and it gives it like a dark tone to it, which I like. That's where I kind of hope that the Turtles eventually go back to, is maybe more in line with like the original comics and the more like adult dark tone. Like, I would love to see them do something with like the Last Ronin series, which is part of the comics, and just kind of really focus on those like more adult themes in the comics. But like the more kid friendly stuff is really fun too. So I'm kind of game for whatever they want to do. Like anything Ninja Turtles, I'm here for it. I'm good to go.
Yeah, Bryce, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, like Bethany, I'm really excited about the new movie. I think it looks great. Bethany, you mentioned the animation style. It reminds me a lot of the new, like the Spider-Man, like Spider-Verse movies.
Yes. Yeah.
So which are really popular and rightfully so. And I mean, you know what? If the Ninja Turtles new movie is half as popular as or half as good as the new Spider-Man movie is, then I think we're in for a treat. And like you said too, it's interesting because like, you know, they're Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and you know that teenage part is first, but like really if you go back and like watch like a lot like the original cartoon or the live action movie, there's like, I mean, yeah, there's a little bit of immaturity there, but like they don't really scream teenagers to me, whereas this new movie, like, yeah, they look like they're like 12, 13 years old. And you know, kind of Donatello's like dorky. He's got glasses on, and just I think one of them maybe has braces or something like that. So like they're really kind of playing up the whole teenage thing, which I think will be really interesting and should make for a fun movie. But I mean, you know, as far as like where it goes, I think it's gonna be one of those things where, you know, we've seen it since it was introduced in like 87 with like the toy line anyway. There'll be waves of popularity with it. And I mean, I really hope this new movie does well, and hopefully we get a couple sequels out of it. And then I'm sure it'll kind of go away for a few years, and then we will get some new, you know, revamped version of the Ninja Turtles later on. So I'm all for it. And I think it's going to be one of those properties very similar to, we talked about in our last episode with Barbie, where, I think that, you know, as generations go on, parents will be introducing their kids to it, and it'll just be one of those properties that will kind of continually be popular. I don't know. How about you, Caroline?
I this is maybe more of a hope than a prediction, but I think they need to embrace their musical roots, and you know, maybe another tour, Broadway show. I don't know, something that explores the power of music.
Coming out of their shells, yes, I am 100% on board with this, Caroline. Embracing music, embracing, you know, I'm going to send you a link to Coming Out of Our Shells.
You'll love it.
So you can watch it. Yeah, it's so good. If you want to see a Turtles musical in the future, yeah.
It's good. I in doing the research for this episode, there was so much looking. Like I knew from the research that it had been sponsored by Pizza Hut. I had in addition to the toys and dolls and collectibles and all of that, like all of the tie-ins that they had, like the food tie-ins as well.
Green turtle shell pies.
Yeah, and pizza faces, and just like they. What was it in the? Well, I sent you one, Bryce. What was they kept repeating like fresh from the sewer? Like that was a good thing.
I think that was the green looking gross fruit pies.
Oh,
with like the green custard in it or something.
Yeah,
fresh from the sewer.
Yeah. So,
but then there's the good ones like the Ninja Turtles popsicles.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was that kind of like creamy popsicle that was like the Ninja Turtle head with the gumball eyes, and like that's such an iconic piece of like childhood, like going to the park and getting one of those popsicles, and they were delish.
There was what was the one that was so much fun to say? The Crunchabunga, was that
Oh, I think so.
the cereal? Like if there was, yeah, no, okay, I'm mixing them up. There was the Pizza Crunchabungas, which were like Chex, like corn, like a cheesy mixed with a chip, I think,
I would eat
around
that.
that. Yeah, it came
Yeah.
highly recommended on the internet, so they never steer you wrong. Okay, let's go into our round table questions. First one, the Ninja Turtles are, as you mentioned, Bryce, named after famous Italian Renaissance artists. What Italian Renaissance artist would inspire your Ninja Turtle name, Bethany?
So I went with Tintoretto. I sorry if I stole anyone's answer. I went with Tintoretto because like Laird and Eastman talked about the names being like quirky enough to fit the concept. And Tintoretto just has that rhythm, like Leonardo, Donatello, Tintoretto, Michelangelo, Raphael. Like it just fits really well in it. So I don't even know much about the specific painter other than his name, I think would fit the rhythm of the Ninja Turtles.
You could be introduced as like the Ninja Turtle cousin or something like that, who's coming into New York for the weekend, gets in trouble, and the Ninja Turtles all have to bail him out.
Yes. Yeah.
Wasn't my choice, but on my short list. So you didn't steal it, but
Okay.
I'm on board with it. Bryce?
I went with Lorenzo Lotto just because it sounded like an 80s action movie.
Lorenzo Lamas,
Exactly,
right?
yeah,
Like,
the
yeah.
Renegade. But yeah, I'm totally getting 80s action movie vibes off that guy. So probably not a turtle per se. I know that was the question, but I'd like to see Lorenzo Lotto come in as a villain myself. Yeah.
Or like he would be a good vigilante style, like Casey Jones
Yeah.
vigilante style character.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Caroline, how about you?
Botticelli. It was the first Italian Renaissance artist I thought of, and I was thinking afterwards that I might actually go by like Shelley, which people would think is because I'm a turtle with a shell, but it's actually because my full name is Botticelli, which kind of sounds like Shelley.
I like it.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. Okay, so here we go. It's been a while since I've used my favorite question form. You're going on a road trip with one turtle and one non-turtle character. Who would you pick for your road trip? I'll start with you, Bryce.
So much like Bethany, like as a kid, I loved Michelangelo, but like because he was funny and he said dude and cowabunga a lot. But I actually went with Donatello because he's kind of like the really smart one. And like if we run into car troubles, like Donatello would be able to fix the vehicle, no problem. Like it wouldn't take any time off of our road trip. The other person I would have with us, surprisingly, because he's a little bit of a wild card, would be Casey Jones, mostly because I think we could talk hockey on the road trip. Donatello would just drive, and Casey Jones and I would talk hockey. It'd be fun.
Nice. Yeah, that sounds like a fun car. Bethany, who are you taking?
Bryce, those were my exact answers. Donatello, because he would be able to fix the car if it broke down, and Casey Jones because he and Donatello. I'm thinking specifically of the 1990 movie when Casey Jones and Donatello are trying to fix the car after they go back to April's farmhouse. It's Casey Jones and Donatello who fix the car. So in my head, I was like, I want the two people who are going to be able to get us out of trouble if we get into it. I also added a third though, which was Kino. And whenever like I was younger and we would play Ninja Turtles and pretend to be Ninja Turtles, I always pretended to be Kino from Secret of the Ooze. just because I always wanted to be that like sidekick Turtles character. I didn't want to be a turtle. I wanted to be like the human sidekick along with the turtles. And so Kino was kind of that. Kino was that person for me.
Nice. Nice. It is 3 for 3 for Donatello. I am also picking him because, it breaks down. I don't know what to do. So that's good. I went with April again, one of the few characters I can name from this. I think we'd have fun. It would be fine. It's fine. I also spent some time thinking about Venus de Milo, the controversial female turtle that I wasn't really sure what was going on there. So I decided then, like, would that count as that would be my turtle character, and I wasn't giving up Donatello. So in the end, I'm going to go with Donatello in April.
I like it.
And finally, last roundtable question. Pizza was introduced in the animated series as the turtles' favorite food. What is your most controversial pizza opinion, Bethany?
So I guess like my controversial pizza opinion is that I'm not really a pizza fan. I know. And I talked earlier about like chasing that like cheesy pizza. That's the only thing that I would ever want like to eat a pizza for, is to like recreate that Turtles pizza. But I'm not a big pizza fan, and that always was just a little like heartbreaking for me as a kid, knowing that like my favorite heroes loved pizza and I just wasn't on board with it. I do make a mean pizza cookie, and so I hope that like redeems me a little bit. Great toppings like marshmallows and M&Ms and chocolate chips. So I'm a good pizza cookie dessert maker, but not a big fan of pizza in general.
I picture you going in this mad quest of going around hitting all of Edmonton's like pizzerias, ordering an all cheese and doing like the just opening up the box and grabbing a slice, and you're just like, it just doesn't do it.
Oh man,
just throw it back in the box and slam it closed.
Out. Yeah.
We need to add that to our list of possible web series that we develop. We've got that one. We've got the one where you drive around listening to car songs. No, listening to The Sopranos. No.
Well, it was.
You were driving.
I was driving, like my favorite driving around tunes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But there was one, I think, of me driving, hitting all of Edmonton's hot spots while the Sopranos theme music is playing in the background. I think it was definitely one web series. So watch for that to come.
All right. Bryce, shock us with your controversial opinion.
Thin crust pizza is trash. Not a fan. I find it's like dry a lot of the time. I'm like hungry afterwards because there's not as much dough there. I'm not a fan of the thin crust pizza. The crust always seems like way too dry, and I have not had one thin crust pizza that has impressed me. So that's my hot take.
Okay.
Caroline, what's yours?
Mine, nothing is inherently off limits as a topping.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm not a fan of pineapple on pizza, but if that's what you want to put on your
I was
pizza.
pretty sure I almost framed it as that specific question, but I'm fairly sure I've used that one in the past. I could not remember your answer, but now that you say you're not a fan, it's kind of coming back to me. I like pineapple on pizza. And I mean, there are things that I probably wouldn't seek out to put on a pizza, but if the right person's making it and they find the taste combination that works, I don't think anything is automatically off limits.
So like anchovies.
Sure.
Wow.
Strawberries.
Okay. Strawberries and cheese and sauce?
I don't know. I don't.
I mean, you could go with the Treats of Pizza from Dairy Queen, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, that's got
Well, yeah.
strawberries on it. So.
And I mean, pineapple opens the door to fruit. Different meats as well. I know that chicken is not always liked as a topping. Some people think that's maybe going too far, but yeah.
Send us your hot pizza takes to podcast@epl.ca and we'll maybe read some on the air.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Bethany. This has been fantastic. I've loved learning so much about the Ninja Turtles. Is there anything coming up at EPL that you would like listeners to know about?
Yeah, so from August 30th to September 13th, there's going to be a digital book club pick in Overdrive and Libby as part of Overdrive's Together We Read campaign. And the book club pick is called Hotline by Dimitri Nash. Together We Read is a Canadian-specific digital book club that Overdrive puts on that focuses on a Canadian title and author. During these 2 weeks that the digital book club will be happening, you'll be able to borrow the title at any time. There's no holds, no wait lists. So it'll be available right there at your fingertips. And you'll see the book club, the digital book title at the top of the EPL Overdrive website, which is epl.overdrive.com, or at the top of your Libby app. So again, that's from August 30th to September 13th.
Yeah, so we'll have a link to Overdrive and Libby and where you can go once that promotion starts. So it's exciting. I like it when there's like a shared release kind of book club pick type thing for people to read. It's fun.
Yeah. This is available for all public libraries in Canada, and it's great that they're highlighting a Canadian-specific title and Canadian authors, so it's really exciting.
Yeah. We hope you've enjoyed today's episode. Make sure that you're subscribed to the show so that you get all of our new episodes. Please also leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and tell a friend about the show.
Please do. And don't forget that we'll have a link to everything that we talked about in today's show notes. And of course, we love to hear from our listeners. So you can email us at podcast@epl.ca. Both Caroline and I get those emails, and we love hearing from our listeners. You can also share your thoughts about the show with us on Twitter @epl.ca and by using the hashtag EPL Overdue Finds. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.